Hello everyone, this is Enormous with TekDefense, and today on TekTip episode 23, we're going to go over Mastiff, the Automatic Static Analysis Framework. Alright, so this year I watched the ShmooCon talks via the Ustream feeds. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get there in person, but there were a few talks that um, uh, really got me thinking about how to do malware analysis better and analysis in general. And one of those talks was Mastiff, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But expect over the next couple of weeks for me to talk a little bit more about some of these other products or projects coming out of, or at least that was talked about at ShmooCon, such as Bro IDS and probably Moloch as well. I enjoyed both of those talks a lot, so I want to show you guys what we can do with those tools. But today we're going to focus on Mastiff, and Mastiff is, as it says here, a static analysis automation framework. So the way you can think of it is everyone pretty much knows what Cuckoo Box is, where we can take malware samples and run them through an automated system that's going to pull out dynamic analysis results from it. So it'll tell us what the system launched, the processes that were involved, the registry keys that were modified, and so on. Well, Mastiff takes the other approach, right? So in malware analysis, we have two distinct categories of static malware analysis and dynamic malware analysis, and then we break that up into basic and advanced. But what this does is it covers that basic static analysis stuff for you. So it's going to run strings. It's going to look at the DLLs, the resources involved. It's going to pull out those resources, and it's going to do it all for you, dependent on which file type that it finds. So if it finds an executable, it knows to run the ep32 tools against it. If it finds a PDF, it knows to run the PDF tools against it. So there's a little bit of logic involved. So that's what Mastiff is, and I'm going to show you, how to run it. I'm not going to go over installation. You'll have to get through that yourself. But luckily, when you download this project and you open up this archive, you'll find that there is a pretty hefty document in there, PDF document. So I should mention that Mastiff was DARPA funded from the Cyber Fast Track program, and as Tyler Hudak, the creator, explained in his talk, that means he had to do a whole lot of documentation because DARPA really expects that out of you. So as you can see, he goes into not just how to install and how to run, but what the Mastiff is actually doing when it gets a file. So it goes through the installation. Installation's not too bad, but you're gonna have to install a whole bunch of third-party stuff. So make sure you do that, and he walks you through how to do most of it. But you may have to go through some of the various websites to find out how to install YAPC or Yara or whatever it happens to be. So the installation is not too bad, except for getting all these prerequisites installed. So once you get through that, you can get into the usage. But as you can see here, the documentation is pretty awesome. It talks about how the workflow works for identifying the file, and if that file is a PE, run the PE tools. If it's as we talked about earlier. So without further ado, let's kind of get into it. I should also mention that in an effort to demo this, I'm going to download some malware using Maltrieve. Maltrieve is a fork of MW Crawler, which we covered previously, created by Kyle Maxwell, and a much faster version of MW Crawler, and is being expanded to cover more sources, and the thug integration is coming as well. So a lot of good stuff coming out of this right now. So you'll get to see 2 for 1 in this show. So let's bring up here. And first, I'm just going to run Maltrieve to get us some malware that we could then run Mastiff against. So I have this installed to, I believe, Maltrieve and then Maltrieve again. Yeah. Okay. So Maltrieve is going to download some malware for me. Okay, so you can see it's going through. The output's not quite as pretty as MW Crawler was, but it's doing a much better job, much quicker job of getting the files that we need. So this is going through, running through it, and it's dumping it all to temp malware, which is where I have it set to go within the program itself. Okay, so I'm just going to let this run for a few seconds here. I'm going to pause the video while we let it do that. Alright, I think we've let it run enough, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. And let's just go to temp malware to see what we got going on there. Alright, so we got a decent amount of files here to be able to run it against. So static malware analysis, as we talked about before, that's stuff like running strings, against these things. So let's say if we wanted to run strings against that, we could do that obviously, and then we can, based on what DLLs, we can see ADV API, so we know there's going to be some registry interaction here. We can take some pretty educated guesses based on what we're seeing in strings and some of the other tools that we run. But the power of Mastiff is I don't have to run that. I have a framework that's going to look at each of these files and then run the appropriate tools against them. So it gives me a standard, consistent format for static analysis. So we've used Maltrieve to grab some malware. Now let's go ahead and run Mastiff against it. So I have Mastiff and opt/Mastiff, and then Mastiff again. Okay, so here's what your directory is going to look like after an install, except for this. This is something I added, which I'll show you guys in a second. But one thing you're going to want to do is, you're going to have to do, is edit the Mastiff config to look at the directories where you installed all those third-party dependencies. So I just want to quickly show you that. So gedit mastiff.config. Alright. So here's your config. You tell it where you want to export its log to. This is going to, in my case, put it to /work/log. And here, actually I probably should have done /opt/work. No, that's fine. But here in plugin directory, this tells us where the plugin directory is for Mastiff, and I think this is already auto-populated when I put it in, so I don't think you have to do much there. Verbose if you want better logging or not. If you want to have it logged to a different database name, you can add it there. Then you have to start putting in, so here's where TRID is installed, here's where the definitions are installed. So if you didn't use their defaults, you have to ensure that you put the actual path that you used, and that is the same for all these programs here. In addition, for VirusTotal, if you want to submit these samples to VirusTotal when you're done, you have to put an API key in order to make that happen, and then turn this switch to on. But as you can see, same stuff going down here. Just make sure you put the appropriate paths to wherever you have these dependencies installed to, if they're not in the default spots. One other thing here is a zip extract at the bottom, which when on, if a zip file comes across, it'll try to extract with whatever password you put in here, and as infected is the norm when sharing when sharing malware amongst researchers, I put that as the password. So that should cover the config pretty much. So you can have multiple configs if you wanted, and then reference those when you run. So if I run sudo as that py, so here are options. I can give it a config file if we don't want to use one, or say we have one config file that dumps the results to one directory while another dumps it to a different directory or to a different database. If you want to have some separation of work when when analyzing particular samples, you could do it that way. For instance, that's how I handled it when I wanted to do the ep23 malware that I was able to grab from VirusShare. I just pointed to a different config file that dumped it to a different directory where it wouldn't get lost amongst all the other noise that I had. So that is the config file. Now let's talk about running it. So you just saw the command mas.py. If I want to run this against a particular file, it's simply putting the path to that file. So in this case, we have temp malware, and here are all the files that are there. So let's go with f22, and when I run this, it's going to run Mastiff against it. Now you'll see we get a couple errors here. The error here is for virus total, because I don't have the API key in, and Yara signatures, and that's because I don't have any definitions on this machine yet. The only other thing that I'm getting an error on, and I'm not sure if this has been happening the whole time and I didn't notice it, or it just started occurring, but I noticed this when I was doing some prep work for the video, that I'm having some problems importing a library in one of the functions here. Jeez, I hate that thing. Alright, so within YAPC I'm having a problem of, or not actually YAPC, I believe it is one of the custom functions. But anyways, in here I'm having a problem with importing this. So I'm not sure if that's been happening the whole time or not. Probably not. I've been playing around with this machine quite a bit, so I might have messed something up right before doing the video. But I can tell you this is still working fine, even with that error occurring up there. But the rest of the stuff was normal or expected. And then to see what this generated, we would go to cd/work/log, and you can see obviously there's a ton of these because I've been playing around with it lately, but let's just go to one of these files to see a sample that it scanned so you can see what the results look like. So here are the results. So it's going to do some fuzzy hashing and give you the results there. It's going to log any of the virus total error, for instance, that's going to go here into the log. That's the config we used. And then it's going to do some p-info, let us know what the file is and some important stuff about the file, let us know what resources it's importing, do strings, and then if it actually was importing any resources, it gives us a directory where it pulled out those particular resources. So let's go there real quick, and you can see these are all the things it was able to pull out of there. So this particular sample had a whole bunch of icons and cursors and dialog boxes that we can then do further analysis on. So now if I want to say look at p-info quick, we can see the p-info data, and we have everything that we need to do our static analysis. So that's just p-info. Let's do resources, that text, and we can see all the resources that are being brought in. So as you can see, this would be very useful, and it's very quick to run this against a single file. So let's go back to Mastiff now. Alright, so Mastiff right now, obviously in its early stages. It was just released, I believe, the day of ShmooCon. So it still have a long way to go to get it where the creator wants it to be, where Tyler Hudak, I believe, wants it to be. So one of the things that he's working on, obviously, is right now we can only run this against a single file at a time. So .py, there's no option to do multiple files currently. So if you want to do more than one file at a time, you kind of have to build it out yourself. And I did that with this Autorun program that I made. And to show you what that looks like, I have it right here. So quick little program that basically just looks in whatever path I tell it to. So in this case, I'm telling it temp malware. And then it's going to look at every file in there, and for every file in there, it's going to run mas.py plus space plus the malware name, the file name, and then it'll run it against each of those. So to show you how that works, let's go back to the command prompt and sudo python autorun. So now this is just reading through that temp malware directory, and for every single piece of malware in there, it's going to run through and do analysis on it. And you can see how quick this is working, where this is something, if you were doing it manually, that would take hours to go through this many samples. And this is just ripping through them real quick. And it'll just keep going until it gets to the end. And to spare you the wait, I'm just going to cancel. And yeah, so now we could go back to that work directory and see all this new data we have to work with. Another important thing is this does have a little database with it, and I forget where that's located by default. Let's see. I think it actually might be right with the work directory. Yeah, so see that mastiff.db, that is where a SQLite database. So using SQLite Manager, which I have right here, now you can start getting some better data on there. So files will show you every file, where it was, the size of it, first seen, last seen, how many times you scanned it, and then the Mastiff table within that SQLite database is going to give me the hashes, the file type, and the fuzzy hash. I believe that's it. And yeah, so this is good again for pulling out stats if you wanted to build a nice little web app to surround this. You could use this as the basis of that. And of course, at some point, seeing some more columns in here for some of the resources and everything else might be in the future. And yeah, so you see where the directory where I have them all located, and you can see where I use the other config to point it to a different directory and to a different work log as well. So that's the ep23 malware stuff. For instance, or along with that, if you're interested in looking at the results of what I did before, if you go to TekDefense.com and go to the download section, the Mastiff results for these were the first 8 samples or so, I believe, that VirusShare put out. And this is like a whole another 43, 45, something like that. Now there's like 218 or something like that samples out on VirusShare, so I'll probably run the Mastiff against them as well and throw the results up here. But if you want to see what the results look like, that's where you can download them if you like. I should note that, just go back to this real quick. I should note that This .vir, if you're not familiar with the standard, this is the actual sample. So it puts a copy of the actual sample in the directory with it. So be careful when downloading these, and or when you download, if you do download that file I just gave you, because it does contain the actual sample. Don't want to run it for obvious reasons. But that covers the basics of what Mastiff is and how to run it. There's definitely some really cool things coming up in its future. I should mention that Honey Drive, the next version of Honey Drive, is going to have this preloaded. So if you're having some issues getting it installed on your own, just wait for Honey Drive, the next version, to come out, because they'll have it preloaded and ready to roll. But beyond that, I hope you guys enjoyed the show today, and let me know what you think via the normal channels. And if you have anything you want me to cover, or particularly cover, let me know, and I'll make sure I get to it at some point. And of course, the script, the Autorun script that I have, where did I put that? I have out on GitHub here, but I'll put it in a more recognizable spot and link to it off TekDefense.com someplace. So feel free to go there to check it out. But beyond that, thank you for watching, and have a good day.